go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Behave yourselves!
Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Saravia to Movies. Sometimes there are films, throughout my whole life that I've been watching films, that are immensely watchable, that you are compelled to keep watching. And such is the case often, I think, with David Fincher's films. The only one I think I haven't seen is Mank, which I will try to get around to at some point. I really liked Gone Girl. That was quite a very intense movie. And part of me needs to revisit Zodiac someday, which I did. I wouldn't say I found the film enjoyable, but it was certainly quite a compelling film, nonetheless. The Killer is his newest film. It's based on a French graphic novel, and I did read a little bit of it, and I gotta say it's really no different than this film adaptation which David Fincher's been trying to make since 2007. But my issue with The Killer, which again is quite watchable, the film, largely due to two things. Number one, David Fincher's direction, which is, it's almost like being in a trance. I mean, you are watching every moment. And Michael Fassbender, who is, I think, something of an underappreciated actor. He's really quite good. But he's virtually a robot in this movie. The Killer, to me, is methodical, it's cold, it's cynical, and very deeply impersonal. Not unlike the assassin, the killer himself, in this film, who is largely the protagonist. Now, Michael Fassbender plays the killer with no name, and he is very meticulous about his habits and how he performs his job. He's staking out a wealthy target in Paris, a city that he describes as slow to awaken unlike other cities. He does yoga. He listens to the distinctive sounds of a band that I sort of liked their sound. Whether or not I like their lyrics is another question. I'm not sure, because it's been a while since I've heard their music, and that would be the Smiths. And he is in some half-finished apartment where he could spot the target across the way through his window. And he eats McDonald's for the protein. Now, as you're watching the film, there's a voiceover, and it's his voiceover. And he's talking about what it is that he does from day to day, what it is like for him to be an assassin, and how he sort of justifies his job to a certain extent. But there is a problem. The target that he's supposed to kill, he ends up killing a dominatrix, a woman that just gets in the line of fire, literally, and trouble is brewing. He escapes in a way that was quite thrilling to watch. I mean, it was just like, it's a weird thing, because you're watching it and you're not sure how to feel about this guy. I mean, he's an assassin for hire, and yet you want him to get away. It was really quite strange, and that was just in the opening of the film. Usually, a film takes its time to get to a point where you develop a little empathy, sort of, with the character. And but right from the start, I almost felt like, I hope he gets away, but at the same time, look what he's doing for a living, So, and he talks a lot about not having any empathy for his targets, and of course, that I think a lot of this voiceover was a bit superfluous. It was sort of, it had an existential tone to it, not unlike other films in the past about assassins. Some critics have compared this to La Samurai, which starred Alain Delon, if I'm not mistaken, and I haven't seen that in ages, but I was more closely thinking of Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, by Jim Jarmusch, that starred Forrest Whitaker as an assassin, and No Country for Old Men to a certain extent, and even the kinetic Collateral, which had Tom Cruise as an assassin. But in those films, Ghost Dog was rather glum a little too glum for my taste. But you had some sort of mystery or personality to the hitman that you saw in those films. But in The Killer, not so much. And Michael Fassbender, though, you just keep watching him. He has such a imposing presence that sticks with you. But there's no inner life to this character. Now, you could say, well, Hitman is not going to have much inner life. I mean, it could be like something like, if some of you know Luc Besson's film The Professional from 1994, which I believe was Natalie Portman's first film. And in that film, Jean Reno played the assassin who he lives in an apartment, and he just sort of sits there and he sleeps sitting up, and he has a potted plant, and that's it. There's really nothing else to this guy whatsoever at all. I mean, nothing. Kind of like Forrest Whitaker in Ghost Dog. But in this film, Michael Fassbender's character has a girlfriend that lives in the Dominican Republic, and that is his hideout. And she is, after this job that he screws up, she's assaulted and nearly killed by other hitmen. So now Michael Fassbender's The Killer is after these people, and he's going to kill them all. And then, so it's not really a story you haven't seen before, but like once Roger Ebert said something which I think I agree with. It's not what it's about, but how it's about. But the problem for me is that the guy is he's boring. He's not very interesting. And even though Michael Fassbender makes him somewhat compelling, so that's weird, because the way the film is written, it's the kind of stuff that I thought, it's pretty much a cliche. You hear a voiceover, the guy's describing what he's going to do, how he does it. It's methodical, it's clinical approach to what he does for a living. But other films that have dealt with assassins showed a little more humanity to a certain extent. And in this film, it's just very clinical. You know, Fassbender is, as I said, he's a quixotic presence. He's like a snake. He slides in and out of buildings, garages, and restaurants without being spotted. He uses all various aliases because he has many different passports, travels around the country, using aliases of people like Sam Malone from Cheers and Lou Grant at one point and things like that. But my issue with the film is that even as I was watching it, once you get to the point where he's going to, basically it's not about seeking revenge, he's just going to kill everybody. I just felt like I've been through this road before. And the approach wasn't all that different from what I've seen before. So I didn't feel that David Fincher brought anything new to this. Now, having said that, David Fincher is still a marvel of a director. Even with material that seems a little cliched, like this film, or even Panic Room, which actually was far more intense than this picture. This film has moments of intensity. The problem was, I just didn't care. I didn't care about this guy. I didn't care about the people that he went after, because they're all in the same business in a sense, right? I mean, they if they're going to hire somebody to kill somebody else for them, they're no different than this killer. But he has this girlfriend, and the problem was that wasn't really fleshed out. I felt that maybe that should have been fleshed out a bit more. Just to bring a little more humanity. You don't have to show an assassin being completely cold and impersonal and have no feelings whatsoever or emotions, because we, the audience, have to latch on to something. I'm not saying, you got to make it sentimental. It's not what I'm saying at all. But just showing some sliver of humanity. It used to be back in the day when they showed assassins in movies, if they eventually would have a change of heart and not kill somebody, and because they got to know them and that kind of thing, their target. In this film, it's not like that at all. So I can be appreciative that even other pictures that I mentioned, like Ghost Dog and so on, are not exactly cut out of that cloth, which became a cliche. But in this film, there's really nothing there. And if he has a girlfriend and he cares about her, visits her in the hospital, and we have those scenes, it makes you want to know him a little bit more, just to understand where he's coming from. Not to provide motivation. I mean, the only motivation this assassin has is money. He has money, but to understand him, to have some idea of knowing where he's coming from. And this film avoids all that. The other films I mentioned, even as glum as Ghost Dog was, Forrest Whitaker just is an actor who is still able to bring a personal touch. And same with Jean Reno in The Professional, and definitely Tom Cruise in Collateral. But for me, first of all, I think it was the best film of the 2000 decade, or certainly one of the 5 best, was A History of Violence with Viggo Mortensen. That was also based on a graphic novel. And he is a former hitman, and he changes his ways and uses a different alias, raises a family. They don't know his secrets until it becomes clear what it is that he used to do. But I kind of missed that. You want to latch on to something if your protagonist is a killer. And there was nothing to latch on to here. At least not for me. But on the whole, though, I gotta say, I would say this is a fair film. But on the whole, quite often, I have to say, it was compelling and quite watchable. But I've seen this before, and I wanted more out of it. It just felt like, it felt almost like a 90-minute movie, but it's actually longer than that. It's almost 2 hours. And it just missed the mark for me, even though, I have to admit, it is a watchable picture. So, but definitely check it out if you like David Fincher, his work, or just see the film anyway. I think it's at least worth checking out once, and in particular for Michael Fassbender, although he's pretty much robotic through this whole movie. I think Michael Phillips said he's almost as robotic as he was as the android in Prometheus. And I think there's truth to that. But anyway, not a bad picture. Have you seen it? It's on Netflix, by the way. It's streaming now. What do you think of David Fincher overall, or Michael Fassbender, or this film, or the other films I mentioned in comparison to The Killer? Please let me know your thoughts. Thanks again I still am getting more subscribers almost every day, so that's pretty good. And thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed and you like my stuff here and my reviews, please do so, and hit that notification bell if you already are a subscriber for future uploads. And that's all I got to say about David Fincher's The Killer. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.